the mountains and the peaks, the high peaks. So so what's going to happen then? We know that idols are forbidden to get benefit from. So they're serving the mountains. This is a very common thing. All the Indians, they serve different forces of nature. So if you have these Nachrim who serve the mountains, they serve the peaks. So those are permitted. The mountains themselves are permitted to get benefit from. But that which is on them is forbidden. So let's say they put some adornments on it, they put gold, silver on the mountain, that's forbidden. You cannot, this is a pasuk talking about Avodah Zora, talking about idol worship. It says that you can't desire the silver and the gold that's on it, and the pasuk goes on, and you can't take it for yourself because it's the abomination of Hashem. So we see that it's specifically the silver and gold that's on them that you can't take, but the mountains themselves you can get benefit from. Rabbi Yosi says, Elohim Alahorim. The pasuk says, this is in Dvarim, it says, Abi ta'abdun es kol makomos, asher avdu sham makomos. You have to destroy all the places that the non-Jews served, that you're inheriting them. As Elohim, their gods Alahorim on the mountains, Haramim, Balagvos, and on the peaks. So we see that Elohim Alahorim, Rabbi Yosi makes a drasha below Ahorim Elohim, that it's their gods which are on the mountains, but not if the mountains themselves are their god. It says Elohim Alagvos, right? The pasuk goes further, says Alagvos, so that is specifically their gods which are on the peaks, below Alagvos Elohim, and not if the peaks themselves is their god. So Rabbi Yossi asks, 1 second. I'm telling you that we make a drasha that it's Elohim Alahorim, but not if the Harim themselves is their god. It says Elohim Alagvos, and not if the peaks themselves is their god. But then the pasuk ends off. The last words of the pasuk are v'sachas kol eitz ra'anan. Underneath every.
We just came online. We missed the whole beginning. I don't know about everybody else, but your transmission just started.
Yeah. I apologize.
Okay.
It's my fault. I slept through my alarm this morning. I apologize.
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether you were there or not. Okay.
Yeah.
Where are we? Where are we?
Everybody. Yeah.
Okay.
I really apologize. We just started. You didn't say anything.
It happens. Oh, we're in the Mishnah?
Yeah, the Mishnah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So the Mishnah is saying, so far we have the opinion of the Tanakh. The first Tana is saying that if non-Jews serve mountains or peaks, which again, if a non-Jew serves something as an idol, it doesn't make a difference what it is, it becomes forbidden to get benefit from it. But if a non-Jew, the first opinion of the Mishnah says if a non-Jew serves a mountain, or he serves a peak, he's like we were saying before, many Native Americans, right? They would serve all these type of natural things of nature.
There's some peaks on Mount Rainier that were native. They worship the mountain.
Right. Yeah. So those themselves are permitted to get benefit from them, because the Tanakama, he has this pasuk of Osachmo Kezav Azav Aleim, which implies that you just can't have the silver and gold on them, but that they themselves are fine. Yossi Galili is making a drasha that the pasuk says Elohim Alahorim Alagvos v'Sachas Kol eitz Ra'anan, their gods on the mountains, on the peaks, and underneath every tree of Ra'anan. So Rabbi Yossi Galili is making a drasha that specifically Elohim Alahorim, their gods which are on the mountains, but not if the mountains themselves are their gods. Specifically, their gods on the peaks, but not if the peaks themselves is their gods. So then he asks 1 second, for what reason is an Asherah also? For what reason is an Asherah? We know there is a famous idol called an Asherah tree that many of the non-Jews had served. So for what reason is an Asherah forbidden? But we should make a drasha. We should say this, Tachas Kol eitz Ra'anan, Elohim, their God, Tachas Kol eitz Ra'anan, underneath of the tree, but not the tree itself. So why do we, but of course we know that Asherah is forbidden. So the answer is, because it has the hand of a person. A person is involved in making it. Meaning, Rashi explains is that a person planted it. Mountains are made naturally. A person can't make a mountain. The mountain is made by Hashem. But a tree, a person plants a tree. So therefore, that's not in the same boat as something like a mountain or a peak, which is a totally natural formation, and it's not. A person can't go and make it forbidden, as opposed to something which is created through a person. A person could go and make it forbidden. Amar Rabbi Akiva, ani oven v'adon. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to judge in front of you that kol makom shatamoti har gavoa v'giva nasa v'eitzranon dashi yisham of avodas kochavim. Rabbi Akiva says, I'll tell you why we shouldn't learn out from this pasuk. We shouldn't learn out from this verse that an Asherah tree is not forbidden to get benefit from, because really, what the pasuk is not telling you is not here to make to exclude Eloheim, Alahorim, Alagvos, and Tax Leisranan, but not themselves for everything. What the pasuk's really coming to do is really just point out where are you going to find idols. The Torah is telling you when you enter the land of Israel, where are the idols going to be? Because you have to destroy all the idols. So the Torah says they're going to be on the mountains, they're going to be on the high peaks, they're going to be underneath the trees. That's where all the idols are going to be. We still make the exclusion of the mountains and the peaks, that we do. Rabbi Akiva agrees to that, but based on the fact that Rabbi Akiva says we know we have other psukim talking about Asherah tree. We have a pasuk which says the Asherayim tisr from Be'esh. There's another pasuk in the Torah which says they have to burn the Asherah tree. So obviously this pasuk can't be excluding and telling me that I don't have to get rid of that of an Asherah tree. So you might ask, what's the pasuk saying Tachas Kol Eitz Ra'anan for? The answer is the reason why it's saying Tachas Kol Eitz Ra'anan is just to give a sign, to point out for you, to give you directions about where you're going to find the Avodah Zora, where you're going to find the idols when you enter the land of Israel to destroy them. But it's not coming to exclude and say, specifically the gods which are underneath the tree, but not the tree itself. That's not, and we know that because we have other psukim which say that you have to destroy the Asherah trees. So, in summary, basically, we have three opinions in the Mishnah. They all seem to be saying the same thing. They just have different opinions of the drasha. Tanakama is learning out from Losachmo Kezvazav Aleim. Tanakama is saying that the mountains themselves are permitted because the Torah implies only the gold and silver on them are forbidden, but not the mountains themselves. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says we learn out from the pasuk of Eloheim al-Horim, but not the Horim themselves, not that the mountains themselves are their God. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is bothered by, if so, if we learn out from there, then why is an Asherah tree not permitted? Because we should also make a drasha of Eloheim Tachas Kol Eitz Ra'anan, that they're gods underneath the tree, but not the tree itself. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili says because there's a difference of the fact that it's planted by a person, whereas Rabbi Akiva says that no, it's because that pasuk, that end of the pasuk, is not coming to exclude anything. The end of the pasuk is really just coming to point out where you're going to find the idols. It's not extra, but and we know that we can't use it for an exclusion because of the other pasuk of Asher and from Be'esh. You have to burn the Asherah trees. Good. Okay. So let's see the Gemara. The Gemara says Rabbi Yossi Aglili Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he says that's the Tanakama, meaning the Gemara is asking, what's the difference between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Tanakama? Well, according to both of them, the mountains and the peaks themselves are permitted. What's the difference? Why are they both talking? What's the practical halachic difference? So Amar Rami Bar Chama Reish Lakish, Tzipoy Har Kahar Ika Benayu. The covering of the mountain being like the mountain, that's the difference between them. The Tanakama Savar Tzipoy Har Enu Kahar. The covering of the mountain itself is not like the mountain, umitzar, and therefore becomes forbidden to get benefit from. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Savar, Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds Tzipoy Harehu Kahar. The covering of the mountain, it is like the mountain. That meaning we know that something that's just like sitting on the mountain, that and the mountain served, that becomes forbidden. The mountain itself does not become forbidden. Let's say the guy covers the mountain in something. So does that covering become forbidden? Is that considered something that's just on it? It's considered something detached from the mountain. Never just like anything else detached from the mountain that would become forbidden to get benefit from. Or do we say that no, that's considered something that's attached to the mountain because this is covering the mountain, it's considered like attached to the mountain, and therefore just like the mountain itself doesn't become forbidden, this covering also doesn't become forbidden. So Rami Bar Chama Reish Lakish wants to say that that's the difference between the Tanakama Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Tanakama is holding based on his pasuk of Osachmo Kesef Aleim, you cannot desire the gold and silver that is on them. So that's something that sounds like something that has to be much more detached, like gold and silver. So therefore, something which is more attached, which is like something which is like the covering. That's right. That's not like the mountain, and I'm sorry. One second. I'm going backwards. I mean, the Tanakama is holding right that the covering the mountain is not like the mountain, therefore becomes forbidden. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is saying no, it is like the mountain. That is considered like the mountain, and therefore will be permitted. So the Gemara goes further. The Gemara says, Rav Sheshes says, "Dikumi ama tipu yahar enu kahar." Sheshes, no, everybody holds that the covering of the mountain is not like the mountain. And really, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he's going to be coming to be more stringent. Everyone agrees about that. That's not like the mountain, therefore it's forbidden. Here, we're talking about a tree which is initially planted just to be a nice tree, to look nice, and then they went and served as an idol. It wasn't planted initially to be an Asherah tree to serve it. Tanakama holds a tree which is planted, and then at the end it was served. It wasn't served right away. That's permitted. Rabbi Yossi also. Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds that a tree which is planted and then served is forbidden. So the Gemara says, "Umimai." Where do we know this from? What that Rabbi Yossi Aglili said, why is an Asherah forbidden? He says because it has a person involved, and anything which has a person involved is forbidden. So Gemara says, that line, Rabbi Yossi Aglili added in, that anything that has a person involved is forbidden. What's that coming to include? What's it coming to include? Is it not coming to include? Is not coming to include a tree which is planted and then it ends up getting served. Meaning, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he said this extra line in the Mishnah of Kol sheyesh b'tfisa dei adam aser. So we want to know what's he coming to include with that. So Gemara wants to say that what he's coming to include is anything that a person is involved with and then it serves as aser, it's forbidden, even if it wasn't planted initially for the sake of being an idol. It was just served later as an idol, but initially it was just planted to be a regular tree. So therefore, so we want to say that Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he's saying that that's forbidden, as opposed to Tanakama, he would say that no, only a tree planted initially to be an Asherah, only a tree planted initially to be an idol, that's what's forbidden. But if it was planted initially just to be a nice tree, a beautifying tree, or a fruit tree, or whatever it is, and then you end up serving it, that cannot make it forbidden. So the Gemara says, even Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, he holds that a tree which is planted and then when served later is forbidden. Tanya is Tana Brisa. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, Mitoch shenemar, from the fact that pasuk says Elohim Alahorim, it says Elohim Alahorim, below Ahorim Elohim, is the gods on the mountains. We make an inference, not if the mountains themselves is their gods. Elohim Alagvos, their gods on the peaks. Below Gvos Elohim, but not the peaks themselves are their gods. So Miani, I learn out, beneath all the trees, Elohim is their God. Below Eitzranon Elohim, but not the tree themselves is their God. Meaning that implication, by that pattern, like we said in the Mishnah, the last line of the pasuk of Tachas Kol Eitzranon should be the same thing. That's specifically their gods which are under the tree, but not the tree itself. But yet we know, like he's about to say, Tamaloma, the pasuk comes along, the Torah tells us that there are Asherah trees you have to burn on fire. So if it says Vashirim Tizifrum Be'esh, so then you can't make this drasha. You can't say specifically underneath the tree, but not the tree itself. So why is the Torah? What's the Torah trying to tell us when it says Tachas Kol Eitzranon? What's the Torah trying to tell us when it says underneath every tree of Ranon? So Hahu look at Rabbi Kiva Dasa. That's coming for Rabbi Kiva. So what's Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Kiva is Rabbi Kiva. This is our mission. We put in our mission. I am going to explain and judge in front of you. Every place where you find a tall mountain, a towering peak, an Eitz Ranon, a tree of Ranon, you should know Sheisham Avodah Zora. You should know that there's an idol there. I mean, Rabbi Kiva says that the pasuk is not coming to exclude that it's not coming to say that it's underneath the Eitz Ranon, but not the Eitz Ranon itself. Rather, it's coming to give you directions. It's going to tell you where should you find the idols to destroy them. You're going to find it under the trees. That's where they put them. That's where they like to hide out their idols. So that's where it's coming from. So, but what do we see from Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda? So, what we see from Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda is that from the fact he doesn't make the drasha of lo Eitz Ranon Elohim. So that shows us that he holds that if a tree is planted and at the end of the day it's served, that it's forbidden. Because if it's permitted, like the Tanakama, so he should make a drasha of Tachas Kaletz Ranon, underneath the tree is their God, but not the tree itself. When it was initially planted not to be an idol, and then it was an idol. Meaning, one more time, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda were trying to show from him that he holds as well that tree that was planted initially not to be an idol, and then it ended up being served, that is forbidden. Where do we see that? What he said? He doesn't say that explicitly anywhere. Where do we see that from what he said? So what we see, the way Rashi explains is that we see from the fact that doesn't have the ability to make the drasha of Tachas Kol Yitzran Elohim, but not the Yitzran, but the Yitzran themselves is not their God. He says we can't make the drasha because the Yitzran could be their God. Why can't you make the drasha? Say the pasuk's talking about a case. Say the pasuk's talking about a case where it was initially planted not to be. It was initially planted not to be an Avodah Zora tree, not to be a tree for idols, and then it ended up getting served. Over there, it will be permitted. Say that's where the Torah is talking. Must be says over there it's forbidden, and therefore he can't say the pasuk's talking about that, and therefore he needs to go and come up with a Rekiva to explain the pasuk. So that supports that he would be on that team of saying such a scenario is forbidden. So the Gemara goes further and says, Rabbanon, according to Rabbanon, who say that if a tree is planted and then it's served later, is still permitted. What do they do with the pasuk of Asherim Tisrim Beish? What do they do with the pasuk which says you have to burn the Asherah trees? So the Gemara says, it's needed for a case where the tree was planted initially for the purpose of Avodah Zora. That's when you burn it. If it wasn't planted initially for the purpose of Avodah Zora, even if later on it's served, then you're not going to burn it. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Nami mi boy le'lachi. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, don't you also need the pasuk for that? Don't you also need the pasuk b'asherim tizrum be'esh for a case where it was initially planted? So how do you have the right and how do you have the ability to learn out, to extend the chiddush, to extend what we learn out, even to the point of saying that even if it's served later when it was not planted initially for that purpose, it would also be forbidden. So Gemara says, Hakanami, you're right. Really, he does need the pasuk for that. So then you're going to say, fine, so where does he know that from? A tree that was planted and then it was served later, where does he know it from? Nafkali learns it out. He learns it out from the pasuk of Ashereim and their Asher trees tegadeon. You have to get rid of them, which sounds like tegadeon sounds like you only have to get rid of that which grew later, but you could leave the trunk. You could leave the main part of it. So Ezu Echigidu Asar V'Yikaro Motor. Which tree is that what grows later is forbidden, but the ikar, the trunk, is permitted? Have Omer, I'm going to say Ilash Natov Savavado. I'm going to say that's a tree that was planted and then later on it was served. Meaning the trunk of the tree is still fine because that was planted not for idol purposes, but that which grows later is forbidden because that which grows later grew after is already dedicated to be an idol. So the Gemara says, "V'ashirim tisrim be'esh konosiv lo Talmuda." So, but 1 second, the Gemara asks. So that means that the source for Rabbi Yossi Aglili is from V'ashirim tigadeon, but the pasuk that's quoted is V'ashirim tisrim be'esh. The pasuk that's quoted earlier, the pasuk that's quoted earlier, but from the Gemara quoted the pasuk of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda for Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, we quote the pasuk of Asherim Tisrim Be'esh. That's the wrong pasuk. The pasuk we really need to quote is Vasherim Tigadeon. But Vasherim Tisrim Be'esh doesn't show us anything. So Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who we were saying he learns that from the pasuk Vasherim Tisrim Be'esh, that's the wrong pasuk. So the Gemara says no. Ilulo Nemar Ka'amar. What it's saying is that had it not said, that's what it's saying. Had it not said this pasuk, meaning Ilulo Nemar Tisrim Be'esh, had it not said the pasuk of Tisrim Be'esh, they have to burn it with fire. Vayisi Omer, I would say Vasherim Tigadeon. When the pasuk says Vasherim Tigadeon, Be'ilon Shotom Etchilolaka, that's talking about a case where the tree was planted initially for this. That's when you have to get rid of the branches. But if it was planted first, not for idol purposes, and then later on it was served, that's totally fine. So hash to dixiv Vasherim Tisrim Be'esh. Now that I'm sorry, if it was served one more time, if it was meaning if it was planted initially, then it would be forbidden. I'm sorry, it's the opposite way. So then So now we have the pasuk, we have the extra pasuk. Now that already says this from Beish, meaning had I only had one pasuk, so then I would say, okay, fine, the one pasuk is telling me everything's forbidden. But now they have two psukim, so now it has Asherim Titzrim Beish and it has Asherim Tigadeon. So I say 1 second. So what's the difference between these two psukim? One pasuk sounds like you have to burn the whole thing. One pasuk saying that you only have to burn what just grew later. What's the difference? Must be one is coming for a tree that was planted initially to be an idol, and one's coming for a case where it's planted initially not to be an idol and then was served later. So therefore, when Rabbi Yehuda quotes the pasuk of Asherim Titzrim Beish, even though that's not totally the correct pasuk, it still it still shows us this idea, because this pasuk is necessary, because I need both psukim to show me this idea. So Gemara says, what do they do with the pasuk Vasherim Tigadeon? What do they do with this pasuk? Because they say that if a tree was planted and served later, that's permitted. What? That's totally permitted. So what do they do with that pasuk? So the answer is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It's coming from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Gidui Avodas Kolchavim Kodmin Kibush Eretz Yisrael, chopping off the branches of the idols, that comes before conquering the conquest of the land of Israel. But Kibush Eretz Yisrael according to the Bir Avodas Kolchavim. But conquering the land of Israel is prior. That's precedence over totally destroying the idols. The Tani Rabbi Yosef Tana Bryce, if you need tatzim as bizbachosam, you have to crush their altars, and then leave it. Shibartim is metzevosam, you have to break their monuments, and leave it. So the Gemara says Bahanach and leave it, but you need to burn it. The Torah tells us you need to burn the idols. So Amar Ravuna says Hanach or Dov, leave it and chase them and conquer them, and then burn it. Meaning is that they learn out this pasuk because there's two stages of destroying the idols in the land of Israel when they enter the land of Israel. The Jews were commanded, when you enter the land of Israel, you have to destroy all the idols. You destroy the altars, the monuments, the Asherah trees. You have to get rid of everything. And the Torah says is that you have to break it, you have to smash it, and it says, and the trees you have to burn with fire. So it sounds like there's two different stages. It sounds like first you have to break it, and then you have to burn it. So the Gemara is saying that we learn out Asherim Tigadeo, and that's what we learn out from this pasuk as well. That first you take off, you just you break the idols, you don't totally destroy it, you don't totally consume it, and then later on, after you conquer them, then you totally destroy it. So that's what the Rabban learn out from Asherim Tigadeo. Of course, the pasuk is talking about a tree which is planted initially to be an idol. It was planted initially not to be an idol; it's totally permitted for the Rabban. But when it was planted initially to be an idol, so then when they enter the land of Israel, all you do is just take off the branches, then conquer the people, and then come back and burn it. And there's different stages.
Would they be asking, did you plant this tree to be an idol? How would they know whatever the intent was for the plant?
It's a good question.
It seems like you would just, how would you know? It seems like you had to just cut it down and burn it.
Yeah. I mean, but the Gemara is really saying there's two stages. But you're saying that how are they able to identify if it was an Asherah tree or not?
Well, not enough as a Asherah tree, but they're saying if the intent was.
Oh, that's what you mean. If the intent was initially.
If you're going,
right.
How would they know what tree the intent was of? If you're going to kill you take over a city, you kill the population. How do you know what?
I hear the question.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be that you could assume. You could assume when they're into the land of Israel, when they're a bunch of idol worshippers, that if you found an Asherah tree, then that was planted initially for. But you don't know 100%. That's true.
You wouldn't know. So you just assume
right? But the halakha is still relevant for later points in time. Then you would know. But we're here when you're entering in totally blind. But it could be that the assumption is that it's planted for that.
Second from the two, not the tree.
Or if there was a wild tree too.
All right, let's hold here. Okay, I'm so sorry for that today. I really feel bad. Tomorrow I'll